I want to take one brief moment and ask a quick favor. If you enjoy the content of the XM podcast, please hit the subscribe button to keep up with new episodes as they are released, and give us a comment if any of our episodes have made an impact on you. Thanks so much for making this podcast go global and reach those who are looking for a little encouragement, education, and most importantly, more insight into what it means to live a Christian life during difficult times.
It's the XM Podcast with licensed mental health therapist Matthew Canavy.
You may have heard a few of the recordings I did live at a convention in Orlando last summer. I got to spend some time with some great guests and meet some really interesting people. Here's another interview I conducted that week with the Superintendent of the Southern Missouri District of the Assemblies of God Church. He and I discussed how pastors can be mindful about the priorities in their lives and the practice of healthy pastoral care. Please welcome to the XM Podcast, Pastor Don Miller.
I'm doing great, Matt. It's really good to be with you. Great to be here at General Council and just enjoying all the atmosphere.
There's a lot going on here.
My lands, yes, there is. There's a lot of people and a lot of stuff.
A lot of action. Thanks. I know your schedule's full. Thanks for carving out a little bit of time to spend with us on the podcast. For those who don't know you, share a little bit about who you are and give our audience a little background on Don Miller.
Okay. Raised in rural Missouri, came to Central Bible College in Springfield. And there, Vicki and I got married. From there, we were in two different churches in the Springfield area on staff positions. And then we went to Ash Grove Assembly of God, just 20 minutes to the northwest of Springfield. We pastored there for 25 years. I jokingly tell people that I was going to stay there till I figured out how to pastor and gave up and instead got voted in as the district superintendent.
Yeah.
So we've been in this role almost 14 years.
Wow.
And really didn't give up the title of pastor. So someone asked me when I came in, what shall we call you? And I said, don't want to give up the name pastor. So I began to go by Pastor Don, just because I feel like a lot of my role is to be a pastor to the ministers and to the churches.
Yeah, that's good. So we're going to get into talking about pastor care, but I want to hear a little bit about, I feel like, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like things have just been difficult over the last 4 or 5 years. At Emerge, we have seen an influx of pastors who are dealing with just different types of stressors. Not that there's always not stressors when you're pastoring, but it definitely feels like there's been an uptick. What are some of the things that you've noticed being a superintendent, leading these pastors in your district?
Let me put a parenthesis in here real quickly. I just want to say thank you to Emerge. I am so thankful for the ministry. For a number of years, it seemed that Emerge focused a lot on recovery.
Yeah.
And in the past few years, the explosion of the way that you guys have increased your dimensions and your scope beyond recovery to really go, as you say, soul care, but really being proactive and helping people to, it's that whole idea of a fence at the top of the cliff rather than an ambulance at the bottom. And so I wanted to say thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate that. I do feel like for a long time, Emerge will always be the ambulance at the bottom of the hill. But it's like, man, if we can help shepherd the shepherds, what unbelievable things can happen for the church. It's like if we can help get them, and I just mentioned on a podcast not long ago, I did an intensive recently with a pastor, and he got to me, he was from out of state, and our first session he was like, I don't know why I'm here. My life's pretty good, my marriage is pretty good, but after like the third or fourth day, he was like, mind blown for how much stuff had come up about pastoring a church through 2020 and how much anxiety and stress he was carrying that really wasn't even on the forefront of his mind. And the thing is, that going untreated could have turned into something way worse down the road.
Oh, yeah. And, the thing is, if we can catch it before the catastrophe happens,
absolutely,
it's so much easier to recover. And I think you hit something very important, and that is there's stuff running behind the scenes. I explained to some pastors one time, I said, what you have to understand, if you pick up your phone, if you take a look at it, every little once in a while I'll look at it and I'll realize I've got about 50 apps running behind the scenes.
Yeah.
It's running in the background, and I have to click those off. And I shared with them, a lot of times as pastors, as ministers, we've got all these things running behind the scenes that we don't even realize realize they're there. We've masked them, we've covered them up. We're so busy that we're not taking time to think about them. But all along the way, they're draining our very system and making us more vulnerable to things that can be detrimental to us and to our family.
Yeah. So this gets us into kind of like the meat of our conversation. I'd love to hear from your perspective a little bit about that pastoral care. What are some things that they need to be thinking about? What are some things that you feel like would be successful, making sure that they're implementing in their life, practices, things to be thinking about? What are some of your thoughts around this soul care that we talk about a lot at Emerge?
I think the whole thing is you've got to start with the right priorities. So many times we get so caught up in ministry when we're pastoring that we forget that God's a whole lot more interested in our ministry to Him than He is our ministry for Him.
Yeah.
And then it's so easy to get the priorities. Years and years ago, it seemed like that we had this idea. I teach people priorities are God, family, and then ministry. And a number of years ago, many years ago, and we still do it sometimes. We connect ministry and God.
Very
and
good.
Somehow we think that we're not really serving God if we're not putting ministry at this first level. I share often with pastors and say, God may ask you and your family to sacrifice for the ministry, but He'll never ask you to sacrifice your family for the ministry.
Yeah.
And so I think really getting those priorities straight and realizing that our best ministry is going to come out of overflow. It's going to be what God is speaking to us. And so in our alone time with God, then we are able to minister effectively. We'll never pray powerfully publicly until we're able to spend time with Jesus privately.
Yeah. So I think the family's so important. I primarily work with a lot of pastors now. That's most of the clinical work I'm doing. And a lot of times, they'll come in and talk about a successful ministry that they're leading, but their family's in the dumpster.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And it's like, well, something really is off with that.
Exactly.
I have a tough time, and I'm not trying to throw stones, but it's like I have a tough time understanding how a successful ministry can have such a dysfunctional home life because the way you prioritize it, because I'm in 1,000% agreement with you.
Oh, yeah.
God, family, work, ministry, whatever that, is for you. If the ministry is that successful and the family's not, something's missing.
And exactly, if you're successful at church but you're not successful at home, you're really not successful.
Yeah.
And just as an illustration, my wife helped me so much with this. In our early years of ministry, I was pastoring. I wanted to get it right. I wanted to knock it out of the park. And we had one daughter. We ended up we have 4 daughters now. They're all married.
I've got 2.
Yeah. And they always say daddy's little girl.
Yeah.
But she was, I was doing everything I could. I would beat the ambulance to the hospital. I beat the Lifeline helicopter to the hospital one time because I was going to be there for the people. And my wife one day, and she just was so kind, and she said, I'm thankful that you want to be a good pastor, but your daughter needs your time.
Yeah.
And it was a wake-up call to me, and I realized that I had to put time into my family. And so from that moment on, they would know at times that Dad had to be at the hospital.
Yeah.
But the bottom line was I was going to be at home with them. And, I've never regretted that. I've been so thankful that I had that time to be with them and to spend time with them. It didn't mean that I sacrificed the ministry, that I didn't do what I was called to do, but I put them as a priority.
Yeah.
And so I'm so thankful for that. I'm so thankful that I learned that lesson early on.
So I'm going to ask a personal question. If you don't want to answer it, that's okay. But was that something that was modeled for you growing up, or was that something that you had to learn as an adult? Because I feel like a lot of times we didn't have that model growing up. And so the idea is I'm a success if my ministry is a success, but we don't really have the concept a lot of times because so many people have been grown up in broken homes. How was that model for you growing up?
One of the difficulties for me as far as ministry is because the fact I was not raised in a minister's home.
Yeah.
And so when I came to Central Bible College, I really felt out of place at first because the fact that all these other guys, they knew each other from general council and all these other events. And I felt out of place because my dad wasn't a pastor. He was just a farmer, not just a farmer.
Sure.
And so the Lord really spoke to me at that time and said, I didn't call you because of who your daddy was. I called you because I called you.
Yeah.
But, my mom and dad did demonstrate to me a real concern for family. And so I think that was inborn and there. But as I began to go into ministry, I really had to shift that and understand the dynamics because ministry is different than an 8 to 5 job.
Yeah.
You're not punching a time clock. And it's trying to figure out when you stay at home and when you go. I would often tell our congregation, and when I really got this in my mind, after I'd been to the at Ash Grove for years, I'd look at the congregation and model it for them. I would say to them, I just want you to know that if I have to choose between you and my family, you lose every time.
Every time.
And rather than, throwing their hands up in exasperation, they would clap because they needed somebody to demonstrate to them the importance of pouring in to the family.
Yeah.
I love the saying that says, take care of those that you'll take with you when you leave.
Yeah. So if somebody's listening, and I'm sure there is, that didn't have that modeled, and now they're leading a ministry, but they don't really understand. It's easy for us to say, prioritize God, family, then the ministry. But I think it's easier said than done, especially when you don't know how to do it. What would be some things you would go, here are some first steps for you to implement into being able, because really what it comes down to, from my perspective, I got 2 little girls, that's my legacy. That is so important to my inner circle. Now, so is Emerge. It's a ministry, and it's a place where I lead. But when it comes down to it, it's like at the drop of a hat, that's where I'm going to be at if they need me. But I feel like, and the reason I'm asking this question is because I've worked with so many pastors. They weren't modeled that. They don't understand that concept. And I think they prioritize the ministry higher than maybe it needs to be. And that's where the imbalance happens.
Exactly. And, what we have is, when we're making that statement, have your priorities right, that's at 30,000 feet.
Yeah.
But we don't live at 30,000 feet.
That's right.
We live on the runway.
Yeah.
And so I think that I tend to be a person that looks for tasks to move me forward. I have, for instance, I knew that even with my daughters married, that I needed to have regular contact with them.
Yeah.
So it is part of my plan that I'm going to have contact with every one of my daughters, every one of my sons-in-law, every week.
Yeah.
And so for those who have children who are gone, we can still impact them. For those who have children that are home, I think it's a matter of time. I think it's a matter of, and I don't have them in front of me, but the statistics show the amazing things that happens in families that eat together for dinner.
100%.
And so that was one of the things that we did. We made sure that on a regular basis, most evenings, we were eating together for dinner, and that gave opportunity for interaction.
Yeah.
Everything that we look at that's worthwhile comes out of relationship.
Yeah.
And, I've heard people say, well, you know what, I don't give much quantity time to my family, but I give quality time. Mm-hmm. I just think that's a farce because I don't know how you can find the right quality time. It comes out of quantity. You can't. There's moments that you have that you cannot orchestrate, that you cannot calendar. It's going to come from that interaction and reaction. And being present, just being there, listening to them. We can be in the room and not be present.
Yeah.
And I think finding a way that we are able to get the noise shut down so that we are really listening to our children, that we're hearing what they are saying, finding out what's going on in their life, making sure that, for instance, if we're a pastor, we're not allowing the noise and junk.
Yeah.
There may be some conflict in the church. We went through a serious time of conflict when we were at Ash Grove. And, after years later, our children shared with us, and this is no pat on our back, it was just thanks to the grace of God. Yeah. Our children shared, Mom, Dad, we never knew there was conflict with those families because we just really did our very best to protect them from that, not to bring it into the home.
Yeah.
So that they just considered those individuals who weren't very happy with me just another grandma and grandpa.
Yeah.
And I think that's important because I've watched families that have allowed the conflict of the church to come into the home, and then the children start reacting around people at church too.
Yeah.
So
That's good.
Those are just a couple of things I think.
The theme that I heard kind of through that, which I think is massively important, it's about discipline. It's disciplining yourself to be able to do that. It's like recognizing if I'm going to prioritize things, then I need to be disciplined to know when I've got to shut the pastor part down and turn the dad part on.
Right.
Make sure I'm aware of when I need to be engaged as a husband, and I'm with you on the quality and the quantity. And the one thing when I do public speaking on parenting, quantity's fine if you're engaged. The quantity, if you're on your phone or if you're actually you're still checking email or working, that doesn't count as time, So making sure, I think it's intentionality. It's like when I spend time with my girls, I want to make sure that they know that they're the focus of my attention in that time versus well, I was with them, but you weren't really with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. My wife and I have laughed when we would be at dinner somewhere and we would look at two individuals sitting together at dinner across the table from each other and texting or working on their phone. And so we're careful about that. Sometimes we end up
for sure. No one's perfect.
But yet we really, there are times that we just say, I got to get rid of this so that it's not distracting me from this.
Yeah.
The connection with the person in the room.
Yeah, at that point you're in proximity, but you're not with.
That's right.
That's
right.
What are some things that you feel like maybe things pastors need to be mindful of, be aware of, so that they don't get caught off guard? I feel like it's so easy, certainly the enemy wants to attack, certainly at the marriage level. And I think it's like, if we put healthy boundaries and, make sure we're being mindful of things, like what are some things that you would mentor a pastor and going, hey, here's some advice I'd love to give you?
I think one of the things would be just making sure to listen to your spouse. And I say this especially to guys. As I look through my ministry over the years, there were things that my wife picked up on that I didn't. There is a part of the man's brain that just never seems to connect. Yeah. And I remember one particular instance when she was uncomfortable when I was around a particular person. Nothing was going on at all.
Yeah.
But the person would walk into my room and shut the door,
Yeah.
And she'd say, I'm uncomfortable with that. And I said, okay. And never again did that happen. And it was because of the fact that she sensed something that I may have not sensed. So I think it's very important to listen to our spouse, to hear what they have to say, and then just building healthy relationship with our spouse. Just still having that closeness of friendship. She's my best friend.
Yeah.
My wife is. So
that's good. The other thing, in the years I've been pastoring, I've been mentoring and counseling pastors, is knowing that you have someone to go to, like having that accountability partner. It shocks me. It shocks me how many guys I've worked with that are pastoring hundreds, if not thousands of people, and they don't have that person to go to.
Right.
And it's like, man, I feel like that's a massive blind spot.
We have to have people that'll be willing to ask us the hard questions.
That's right.
One gentleman said one time, if somebody confronts you about something that's not quite right in your life and you say, hey, it's no big deal, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And so I think that accountability is very important. It helps us to make sure, because there are things we're going to miss.
Yeah.
There's blind spots in our life.
For sure.
And we don't see them because they are blind spots.
Yeah.
And so it helps us when we've got others around us that can maybe pick up on something that can help us to see that this is going to be detrimental either to our relationship or to my emotional health or spiritual health.
Yeah, for the last couple months, we've been doing these pastors' lunches at Emerge, and it's just for pastors, and it's just a place for them to come because, you have like some guys will say, I have this with, one of my associate pastors or whatever, and it's like, but there's a power differential, there's a dynamic there, and it's hard to do that with somebody in the congregation, but it's something we're seeing these, a lead pastor from this church and a lead pastor from this church, and all of a sudden they're connecting, and then they're going out and having breakfast together, and it's like, and they can relate. They're living in very similar type of dynamics, and I think that's a really healthy thing to do. I encourage pastors, it's like, get another friend.
Exactly. And you have to get the friendship deep enough where you can be transparent with each other.
That's right.
Where you're not trying to put on a front. It has to be somebody that you're not trying to impress.
Exactly.
But they're just your friend.
Yeah. I've shared this on the podcast before, and I say this to encourage people because it can be done. There's two guys I've been friends with for 30 plus years, and we're in the Word together every day. And it's one of those relationships where they can call me out, and they can go, Matt, you're wrong, and I'll have to go, oh, and if it's coming from them, I'm going to take it to heart,
right?
Or Matt, you're going through a tough time, and I see you're going through a tough time. I want to encourage you and pray for you, And there's times I'll go to them and vice versa, and say, hey, this situation happened with my kids. Was I right in handling it? And they'll go, no, you should have done this. And it's like, you need that compass. And it's like sometimes I think it's great to have one or two other people help give that direction because, it can be very, very difficult when you're shepherding a church and you don't have somebody to go, hey, you're going a little bit this way, and I think you need to go this way, that accountability.
Yeah, and it is very difficult for pastors. I think that you'll find out that there's a lot of pastors that feel very lonely.
For sure.
So I think that there's going to have to be intentionality on developing those friendships because some of them aren't just going to happen by accident. You've got to determine, okay, I need that relationship.
That's good. Anything else you'd like to share with our audience that would be beneficial or anything you'd like to leave them with?
I think that we realize that God created this life to enjoy.
Yeah.
Some of us feel like it's a drudgery. We got to, and my wife and I have talked often about you want to live a life in such a way that rather than getting up in the morning and saying, I got to go do this, it's like, I get to do this.
Yeah.
And I was born for this. And that only comes when we're in relationship with God and we're following His leadership to the point that we can hear and see where He is guiding us to where we were meant to be. He knew Psalm 139. It tells us that He had our days written even before we were born. And so our goal is not to just to be a success, to raise to some apex, but our goal is, God, I just want to be in step with you. And again, I don't want to take too long on this, but
no, you're good.
Had a young man one time. He was like a junior in high school, and he was a little bit of a troubled young man. And he approached me in the summer, and he said, Pastor Miller, I don't know what God wants me to do. And I said, I know exactly what He wants you to do. He wants you to go to school in high school the next 2 years. And then I looked at him and I said, if you're in God's will today and you're in God's will tomorrow, then 10 years from now, you're going to be right in the center of God's will. And there's no better place to be than right in the center of God's will for ourselves and for our family.
It's really good. Pastor Miller, I thank you for your time. I thank you for carving out. I know this is a crazy busy week, and there's so much going on. I think there was another horn going on as you and I were recording. But you got to love it. That's general counsel, and so thankful for all you do for the church and for leaders and pastors. I really appreciate your time today. God bless you.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
It's an honor.
Thank you. Well, thanks, Pastor Don, for your conversation and time regarding caring for those who care for so many. The healthier our pastors are, the better they can lead the church. And when he mentioned that doing ministry doesn't necessarily mean you're putting God first if it's falling into the work category. God wants a personal relationship with all of us. And I know it's hard when our occupation is ministry. But we must have our lives in proper order no matter what our calling is. please share this episode with a pastor and let them know you care about what they are doing. Thank you for listening, and until next time, or when our Savior comes, God bless. In a world where life can feel overwhelming, there's a place in the greater Northeast Ohio area where people find peace, hope, and healing. Emerge Counseling Ministries. For over 50 years, Emerge continues to be a trusted faith-based counseling center offering professional mental health care with a foundation in Christian values. Whether you're struggling with anxiety, depression, grief, or simply feeling stuck, our licensed counselors are here to walk alongside you. And the impact speaks for itself. 97% of our clients say they would recommend Emerge to a friend. 98% say they truly felt understood and heard by their counselor. And 84% report that their issue is improving through the care with us. At Emerge, you're not just a case number, you're a whole person. And we are here to support your journey towards healing and growth. It's confidential, compassionate, Christ-centered care. Learn more or schedule an appointment today at emerge.org. That's emerge.org. Remember, you don't have to walk alone.